I love this channel.
And they look great on you.
What do you say? Animals are super cute. Shopping movies, except free. Cat, dog, trap, animal suits.
You can even wear them with boots.
Ready! Ready! Engage 100 days making comics! Gazbot! Day 57! AR! That's right, you've got the information. It's me, Gazbot. 57 days down and a few more to go. What is going on today? Well, I was pretty busy with real life stuff most of the day. Did a little bit of work for hire, not a lot. A little bit more on that coloring project, which I still can't show you. And then, what else? I did work on the horror. I did some layout work on page 5. It's going slower than I'd like, which I've said before. This page, and I blame myself for the thumbnail being so loose and terrible, but also it's just like an awkward kind of page where it's sort of a bunch of panels of the same thing happening, which is always a challenge to get to look interesting, you know, while still being clear. So anyway, I worked on that, but what I kind of did was just like re-thumbnail it a few times, and I only spent about a half hour, 45 minutes on it today, which, you know, meets the requirements of the challenge minimum, but again, I like to do 2 hours myself or more, you know. Lately, I've been doing half hours a lot, and I'm not happy about that, but life has been life, and I guess that's why it is a half hour, because no matter what life is, you can do a half hour. So anyway, other than the layouts and the coloring, since I can't really show you either of those, I mean, I can show you the layouts, but it looks like nothing. It looks like what you've already seen and then some more scribbles. What I can show you is I did some zombies, like ink drawings for Christmas, for a work for hire for a gift for someone that I couldn't show until after Christmas. And I haven't put on my blog, I haven't put on Facebook, I haven't put anywhere, so you guys will be the first. And it's just a boy zombie with a Santa hat and a girl zombie with an elf hat, but they were done traditional style, and the pictures I took, they were like from my camera, they're not a nice scan, but it'll give you an idea, and it'll give you something to look at. So here is Zombie Christmas Go-Go! And that was rewinding back to before we started the zombie thing. So, not a lot to talk about my work day. I will tell you a little, I don't know if it's an interesting story, but I'm going to tell it anyway, because it's going to be a short video and I'll tell a story. I was talking to somebody the other day, probably Q, about kind of the phenomenon of people rolling down their window and blasting music at the car. And I don't have any real problem with this. I mean, sometimes it's so loud it's crazy, like where I could hear it in my house or apartment through the window when they're down on the street, across the street, and like and it's still like boom, boom. It's like aren't you dying in there? Isn't your heart exploding? And part of me is like, well, I'm an old man now, but like even when I was young, I didn't do that, you know. Like it's just a different mindset or a different social thing or whatever. But there definitely was a time when I was like a teenager where for some reason I'd like to play my music loud enough with the windows down where like I wanted other people to hear what I was listening to. And what's hilarious is I would like drive around like my suburban neighborhood in New Jersey, like where most of the people there were like families or older people, and I'd be driving my dad's crappy, uncool van, blasting like, I don't know, Danzig or the Misfits or whatever I thought was cool at that moment, and just be like, "Dah!" And like, if anybody heard and knew what I was listening to, they would not be impressed. But these people wouldn't even know, and it's just like, and that only lasted for a year or two, and then as I got older, I might still play music and have the window down, but I'm not like blasting it, and you have to be right next to me to hear it, and I'm not doing it to impress anyone, just because it's hot or I want to win, you know, like a normal person. So I went through this little phase, and I was saying how I kind of get it. When you're younger, you kind of just want to express yourself and like show everybody the cool music I'm into, or show that I don't give a F, or, you know, and I do curse. I just try to keep these kind of clean. Although there's one video I cursed it, and I won't tell you which one, but you're going to have to find it yourself if you go back and look. Which one? Anyway, so we had this discussion very recently, like 2 days ago. And I was driving today somewhere in between where I was going. Driving in between where I was going, as opposed to driving where I was, or where I'd never be. I was driving in between. You see, this is where you can drive. It's the only place you could drive. There's no other way you could drive except for between the two places you're going. That's why I'm making fun of myself. Anyway, so I came to a stoplight. My window was down, and I was listening to my music on shuffle on my iPhone. I have an iPod, but I almost never use it because I don't see the need to have, well, anyway, whatever. I use my iPhone for music, shuffle. And a band called, it doesn't matter what band right now, but the point is I was listening to it, and it was not particularly loud, but it occurred to me, oh, my window's down, and the music's playing, kind of like what we were talking about the other day, but today wasn't especially hot, you know, like where everybody had their windows down, and I'm like, probably people don't have their windows down anyway, and a guy pulls up next to me, and his window is down. I'm like, oh, that's funny, his window's down. I wonder if he could hear my music. It's not terribly loud. If he has music on, he probably won't, but if he doesn't, then maybe he will. But even if he does, it's not the most aggressive music in the world. And this is where I'll tell you, there's a band called The Living End, which had like one big, in quotes, hit in the 90s called Prisoner of Society, which I liked, and I bought that CD. And then a while later, there was another CD called Roll On, which I got, which I don't think had radio play, at least not in my area. And I think they had some more albums, but those are the only two I actually own. And Roll On, I had recently put into my rotation. It's not something that I always had. It was just like, oh, let me put some new stuff that I haven't listened to in a while, and it's an old album, whatever. And so one of the songs from Roll On, not the title track, just a random song from the second album that isn't like a popular album, at least here in the States. I think they're an Australian band. And that song's on, and it's, you know, one of their more mellow songs, you know, so it's not even like super rocking, although some of their songs are a little bit heavier. Not real heavy. I guess he's be like, Living End, what does he think heavy is? I understand they're not a hardcore heavy metal type band. They're not even heavy metal, but you know what I mean? Like, they're like soft. They're hard for pop punk or soft for real punk or some weird classification of rock and roll that I don't feel like getting into the minutia of. The point is, whatever their normal level of heavy is, this song is not even that. And so it's kind of going, and then because I think to myself, like, even if I did want to blast it, this would not be the song I'd pick to be like, check me out, you know? And the guy next to me says, and I'm like, what? And I turn down the music, and I'm like, excuse me? And he had a gun now. And he goes, is that Living End on the radio? I could not have been more shocked. Not only did I just have a conversation about nobody gives a crap about what you're listening to, not only was I just thinking, I wonder if you could hear it, but who is going to recognize The Living End at all, let alone their second album and some random mellow track on it that he heard for 10 seconds? So I was like, I couldn't believe it, but for some reason what I fixated on is it wasn't the radio. I said, yeah, it's The Living End, but it's my iPod. And I said iPod even though it was an iPhone. So even in correcting him, I was wrong. So I don't know what's wrong with me sometimes, but this is, if you can figure out from that, and then because the rest of the conversation, I'm thinking I should have said iPhone. Maybe I should still tell him. We've got 10 seconds before the light changes, but he says, oh yeah, and I go, I'm impressed, and I was gonna say that you could, you know, figure out who they were from that obscure track, but I pretty much just got as far as I'm impressed, and then I did that. Because like now, I'm thirsty. I should have drank water before this. And that's sort of my go-to, I'm thirsty. And I did it right then. I said, I'm impressed. And by the time I got there, he goes, yeah, they're a great band. And then the light changed, and we drove away. And the only thing I could think is, well, the first thing I thought was, he's in the band. He's from The Living End. He didn't have an Australian accent. Maybe he's the American guy. Maybe he moved here, and his Australian accent has dropped away, or I didn't have enough of a conversation to realize it. He probably wasn't in the band, I realized, but to me, in my mind, it's way more like, because it was such a bizarre coincidence already, that it's way more likely that he's from the band I was listening to than some random fan that happened to hear a snippet of a song because my window was open and I was playing my music kind of loud, and I don't know. Again, this is probably not an interesting story, but it was the most interesting thing of my day. Well, that I want to talk about anyway. What does that mean? Anyway, today, didn't get a lot of progress done, but some progress is better than none. We march ever forward. We march ever forward. Hey now, hey. It's day 57, and that means we have got 43 days left. A day, 43.